Hi. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Today what I'm going to demonstrate to you is our integration platform, iMan. Today's demonstration will be primarily centered on integrating with Sage 300, but following the primary demonstration, I'm going to show you how iMan can also be used to integrate both X3 and as well as integrating with Magento as well. So today's demonstration will show you how to create an integration which reads data from an Excel spreadsheet, imports that data into Sage 300 as OE orders. We will also be printing off order confirmations using iMan as well before sending those order confirmations to the customer. So what this will give you a flavor of is how iMan can be used in an integration perspective as well as a process automation tool. So I'm just going to log on to iMan. Now, once you've logged into iMan, there are three main parts to it. There's the design area, which is where we'll be spending most of the demonstration today, and this is where we actually create and set up the integration. So this is a one-off design process. There's the scheduling area, which is where we run the integrations once they've been set up, and they can be set to run on a recurring or an ad hoc basis. And then a setup area, which is where you configure things such as lookups, database connections, passwords, FTP connections, etc., etc. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new integration. So once we've created the integration, I've moved over to the Transform Setup tab. Now, we have two areas to this screen. On the left-hand side, we have all the various functions that we can add to any particular integration or automation, and on the right-hand side, we have the design palette, and this is where we configure each of the nodes or the transforms into a set of actions to either do an integration, do a process automation, etc. So the first thing that I need to do is to define my data source. So if I go to my readers, as I said in my introduction, we're going to be taking data from an Excel spreadsheet. But we have the ability within iMan to consume data from a number of data formats. They can be CSV, any sort of database, or which can be connected through via ODBC, text, any sort of XML. And with our connectors, we can pull data out from SageCRM directly, natively, from Magento, and we also have some custom SDK written connectors. One is for Twitter, and this one's just a demonstration one. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to drop an Excel data source onto my integration. And then I need to double-click it, and that will actually open up the underlying setup for the integration. Now, for an Excel spreadsheet, we need to fill in things such as the file, the path, etc. But before we do that, we have the ability within iMan to either consume data from a file, which is what we'll be doing here, but we can also pull data in from an HTTP URL or through email. So you can actually take data directly from an email, whether that's the contents or an attachment of the email, and actually feed that in to be the data source for a particular process. So here, I'm just going to specify the path of my data, and then the file name. Now, we can obviously include things such as wildcards, star question mark into that, so it doesn't need to always be the same file name. And then I just need to specify some things such as which pertain to the particular data source. Because we're working with Excel here, we need to specify the worksheet where we're actually taking the data and any header rows. Now, just before I do that, I want to show you the data that we're importing. So before we start, you can see here that we have a fairly simple Excel sheet. And what we have within this here is several orders where we have both the header information as well as the detailed information in a single record. Now, before we go any further, iMan can consume any data that you give to it. So that data could be virtually in any form, and iMan could be able to understand it. We have the ability to transform the data, and you'll see this in a moment, as well as we're able to consume hierarchical data. So if you're familiar with the Sage 300 import templates, where we have a rec type, then we can also consume data along those lines. Now, once we've put in the parameters and I press refresh, what we have within iMan is a preview area. And in this preview area, it actually shows us what we're doing to the data at every single step within an integration. So what we have here is basically our Excel spreadsheet. So you can see those three orders and each of the rows within there. So this is all we need to do to define our actual initial data set. Now, before I go on to the next step, what we're going to be doing is we're importing this particular set of data into Accpac as order entry orders. Now, for us to be able to do that, we need to have the data in a form which Accpac understands. So we need this data in a header and detail type structure. So what we'll be doing is we'll be adding a data transform to our integration to be able to transform this flat data set into a hierarchical one. So the next step is to add in a hierarchy transform. So the first thing that we want to do is to define our header record. So I'm going to edit, and I'm going to now, we only want to have the fields, the header fields in our header record. So what I'm going to do is deselect each of these detail fields. Now, to be able to construct this header detail type structure, we need to define the relationship between the records. So what we have is a unique field called order ID, which determines each of the records by order. The next step is to define our detail record, and this will be the inverse of what we've done. So we still need to select the order ID field to be able to construct that hierarchy, and we then select each of the detail fields. Now if we go refresh, what we have is we've changed our flat data set into a hierarchical one. So within iMan, you have a number of transforms which allow you to manipulate the data into any form required. So your data doesn't need to be pre-normalized into a specific format. We can accept data in any form, and within iMan we can transform it into the forms required. So now that we've got our data into the correct shape, we could potentially import this into Accpac or Sage 300 at the moment as it stands. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to add in another transform to show you how we can write some scripts or formulas against the data to be able to transform the data at field level. So I'm just adding in another transform, and this is our mapped or script transform. Now if I press refresh, you can see here that we have three fields: quantity, price, and line discount. Now for example, if we ever needed an extended amount, which were the which was a function of these three values, then we can write a formula to do that. So it's simply quantity times price minus line discount. I can check. Now, if I press refresh, we've now got another field in our data set called extended amount, which is a function of these three fields. Now, what I've shown you is a very simple application of our formulas, and I'll be coming back and showing you a little bit later in the demonstration how we can actually add to this and actually do something worthwhile, which is integral and part of the integration. But with the map transform, you can do things such as lookups, you can do text parsing, validation, you can implement your own sort of checking or business logic into the integration. So you're really not restricted on what you can do here. And what we've got within IMAN is we're actually using the VBA scripting engine. So if you're familiar with writing Excel macros or things like that, then you're able to write formulas and expressions to actually create these types of things. Now, before we actually map this into Sage 300 to create the sales order, I'm just going to add in an empty field. And what this will allow us to do is to be able to capture the Sage 300 generated order ID at the point where it gets imported into Sage 300. So we now have our data in a shape and form which to actually import our orders. The next step will be actually mapping this into Sage 300 so that we can actually import the OE orders. So if I go to connectors, I'm going to add in a Sage 300 connector, but you can see that we support a number of Sage products. A couple of these are UK products, so Sage 200 and Sage 50, but we support Sage 300, X3, and Sage CRM. And like I said, I'm going to be showing you a little bit with X3 and Magento after my initial demonstrations. So I need to select the company that I'm importing into. And the next step is to select the type of data that we're going to be importing. Now here we're going to be importing OE orders, but you can see that we support virtually all of the financials, if not all of the financials, all of the IC transactions, all of the OE and PO, projected job costing, as well as Canadian payroll and some miscellaneous things. So here I'm going to be importing OE orders. And now what we need to do is simply map our incoming data set onto the fields within Sage 300. So I'm going to map my header record onto the Accpac orders record. And now it's just a matter of selecting from the pick list the field of our incoming data set, how we want to map that into Sage 300. So here I'm going to map my incoming order ID onto the order reference. Customer obviously goes to customer number. We can map things such as you can see, we expose all of the fields that you can write to. So things like the addresses, the salesperson, salespeople in this case, each of the rates and shipment fields or invoice fields if you're actually creating shipments or invoices as part of the order entry, all of the tax fields. We can create prepayments with orders, shipments, and invoices. So that's here. And optional fields are also supported, and they're dynamically displayed at the end of the field list. So if you're familiar with sample data, which is what we're actually importing into here, you'll be familiar with these fields. These are the optional fields for the order header for SAM Limited. And we're going to map this last field onto the order number field. And this will allow us to capture the auto-generated order number, which we can use either on our audit reports or in this case as a further step along our integration or process, automated process. So once we've mapped the header, it's the same thing that we do with our order details. Now, in this case, I'm going to override the description, but we don't have to set that. We can set as many or as few fields as you want. Again, I'm overriding the unit price. And here, I'm actually specifying the line discount amount. I'm not actually going to map the quantity shipped in this case. So once we've got all of our fields mapped, we can actually press refresh, and this will actually import into the selected company. Now, when you're working in the designer, obviously this would initially be set up to a test company. And once you're happy with the testing, once the customer's happy with the end result, then you would change your company to point to the live company, and then everything would then import into that live company. So here you can see our order number field has been populated, and this has been populated by Accpac. So if I grab one of those order numbers, I go to Sage 300, I plug in the order number. You can see now my order has been imported. You can see things like the reference field, customer, obviously our 3 lines, our overwritten description, our quantity ordered, etc., unit price, and even our line discount amounts. If we go to our next order, similarly, you can see web 237, order ID, etc., etc. So within about 15 or 20 minutes or so, we've been able to take data from our Excel spreadsheet, data which is not in any specific format. We've transformed that data into a form which Accpac will be able to understand, and then we've mapped and actually imported this data into Accpac. Now, what I'm going to do in the second part is I'm going to extend this integration to do a couple of things. First is, what I want to be doing is once I've imported these orders into Accpac, I want to be able to print off the order confirmation, and I want to be able to print that off to a PDF, and I'd like also to take that order confirmation in PDF format and email it out to my customer so that they have an acknowledgement that the order's been received. So here you'll get a flavor for what we can do with process automation within iMan. So just before we, again, use another connector to create our order confirmation, we just need to prep our data set so it has the necessary fields for us to be able to print that confirmation record. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a new field, and this will contain the confirmation report, so the OEConf01 report, and this is the crystal report that we're actually going to print to generate the order confirmations. The second thing is I want to export them to PDF. So what I'm going to do is specify the export path, and what this will do, what we're going to be doing is exporting these exporting these orders or these order confirmations to a temp directory, and we're going to be labeling each of the exported confirmations with their order number. So you can see how we can actually substitute the order number into our export path. So you can see here we've now got our two new fields that we've added to our data set. So what we're going to be doing now is actually mapping these fields into another connector to be able to print the order confirmations. So again, I'm going to be adding another connector. Again, need to select my company. Here we're printing off OE confirmations, but we also have the ability to print off OE invoices as well as AR invoices as well. So you can see here that we can also have the ability to print off order confirmations or any report that we can include with our connector, and we also have the ability to specify each of the parameters. But here we only need to specify the order number, the actual confirmation that we're going to be using to generate the PDFs, as well as where we want to export the confirmations to. Now I'm going to press refresh. And I'm just going to go to G Drive Temp, and in a couple of moments you can see the 3 PDFs being generated, one for each order. So if we open these up, you can see here this is our first order that we printed off, and this is using the standard Sage 300 order confirmation form. So we now have our order confirmation printed and exported. What we'd like to do now is to be able to take these confirmations and to be able to email them out to the customer. Now what we'd like to also do when we're emailing out to the customer, we'd like to include some other information within our email. So we'd like to be able to nicely format to include the customer's name, for example, and we'd also like to include the customer's account balance, and we also need to retrieve the customer's email address as well. So what we're going to be doing is using another map transform within our integration, and this will be within here. We're actually going to be doing some lookups to be able to retrieve those 3 fields. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to put on the email that we send to our customer the customer's name. So what we have is we're going to use a formula which first does a lookup on the customer's account to retrieve the contact name, and if the contact name is empty, if the customer's contact field on the customer record is empty, what we're going to be doing is then doing a lookup to retrieve the name of the customer. So what this will allow us to do is to essentially prettify the email that we're sending to our customer using either the contact, if it's there on the customer record, otherwise we're going to use the name of the customer. So what this formula is doing, it's using one of our internal functions, which is a lookup function, and what this allows you to do is to retrieve data from any database. Here we're doing a lookup against the Sage 300 database, but we can retrieve data from, it might be from an external system, it could be from the source system, it could be from Sage 300 or whatever application that you're actually integrating with. So here we're doing a lookup, but you may need to do things such as translations between product codes, for example, or you may need to look up customer records based off an email address if you're doing an email integration, an e-commerce integration to try to identify the customer record. So these lookups are a key part of any integration, and they're an integral part of IMAN. So I pressed refresh, and you can see now our new preview has our contact name. So if I go to customer 14, you can see that my contact is actually Mr. J. Everly, and we can actually go to our customer record to also verify that. So what this lookup is doing is actually going out based off the order number. It's going out and doing a lookup based off the customer assigned to this particular order, and we're doing that for each record. The second thing that we're going to be printing on our on the email is the customer's balance. So again, I'm going to do a lookup. Again, I'm going to be retrieving the customer balance based off the order ID, and I'm then going to be formatting the balance which is retrieved so into 2 decimal places. Again, no error is found. So we can see here, this is the balance for each of those customers belonging to the orders. And the final thing that we need to do is to retrieve the email address for the particular customer. So again, we're doing another lookup, which simply retrieves the email value from the customer record for the order. Again, just for example, if I make a mistake on the formula and I press check, then you can see here that the field's invalid. If I do something such as that, a syntax error, then I get a relevant error. So we can see now that the email addresses have been retrieved. Now obviously they're going to be sending to me, but in a live situation your customers would be set up with valid email addresses. So we've now retrieved the all of the fields that we want to add to our email to be able to send to our customer. The final step will be actually constructing an email task which will send out a nice prettified and formatted email which also contains the order confirmation PDF. So here I'm going to go to my tasks, and I'm actually going to use an email task to send these emails. But you can see here that we support things like FTP. So if you need to upload or download files from an FTP server, an SSH server, we support that. We also have the ability to do file tasks, and you'll be seeing that in a moment when we actually clear the temp directory of those order confirmation records. And we can execute external processes or run custom scripts. So what we have within iMan is a full middleware or integration solution. So here we're going to actually send email, but we have the ability to, with our email capabilities, we can delete email from a POP3 server, and we can also retrieve emails from a POP3 server and, copy any attachments to a particular directory. So here we're sending the emails in this case, and what we need to do is fill in certain things such as the from address, the to address, etc., construct the email body and specify the attachments. So first of all, I'm going to send from my info address, and then what I'm doing, I'm going to send to the email field, which is in our data set. So this is a dynamically driven data parameter. What I need to do is I'm going to send an email per confirmation record. In my subject, I also want to include some data-driven parameters. So here what I'm doing, I'm saying sample company limited order, and then I'm going to print the order number within my email record. Now the next step is to actually construct the email body. So the way that we do that is by dissecting the email into a number of lines. So the first line that we want to print in our email is our contact. So you can see here, dear, and then we've got the contact name. That was the field that we specified in the previous map transform. The next line on our email will say, please find attached your confirmation, and again, printing the order number along with some static text. The third line will include some information about the customer's balance. So that, again, that's using a field that we used, that we retrieved using the lookup in the previous step. Just some static text thanking the customer. We also want to include our logo. So what we're going to be doing here is just injecting a little bit of HTML. So what we have is an image which contains our logo. And this is actually referencing my local drive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to specify I want to embed any referenced images or other MIME type of things that we reference in our email to be embedded into the email, so we don't have to have them up on an HTTP publicly accessible server. So I'm going to add that. And finally, I just want to print the company name, so some static text there. So now we've defined our body. The final step is to now define our attachment. So what we want here is and this will be So again, this is the full path of our exported order confirmation. And now if I press refresh, this will actually generate the email and send it to the customer, or send it to the email address as per our to address here. So with some luck, that's gone complete. You can now see, here's our first order, or actually in reverse here. You can see this is our first order. It contains the order confirmation PDF, contains some nicely formatted text, the order number in here, as well as the customer balance. And here we have our second order and our third. So with IMAN, you can, IMAN is both an integration tool as well as a process automation tool. So the final thing before I skip over to the quick Magento X3 demonstration is I just need to clean up these temporary files. So I don't want to have these PDFs lying about. I mean, you may need to store these in some sort of document management solution, but here we don't want to. We can print them from Accpac or Sage 300 any time. So I'm just going to close off my email task. I'm finally going to add a final task, which will be to clean up my PDFs. So here, in this case, I want to actually delete file, and I'm going to go export. And here, we've now got our temporary files deleted. And those temporary files were deleted based off the file name of our export file. Obviously, we can also include things like delete all star.pdf, but we want to have a transactional delete process. So that's why I did that previous field, which is using the data from our file. So that sort of concludes our Sage 300 demonstration. As I said before, IMAN is an integration tool, and we integrate with a number of Sage products. And some of those products are known to you, so Sage X3, SageCRM. And what I'm going to show you is a quick demonstration of how IMAN can be used to integrate with Magento with potentially any product. We have a number of Sage 300 sites which are using IMAN to integrate Magento and Sage 300. And for those of you who are not familiar with Magento, Magento is one of the most, well, the most widely used e-commerce platform in the world. So just to show you the integration template that we have for Magento, it's a fairly simple one. What we have is the Magento data. We're going to be taking orders from Magento. First of all, we're going to be updating or creating any customers in Magento, in X3. We're secondly going to be creating the order in X3 before finally updating Magento to flag the order as being processed. So if I just move over to Magento, I'm going to go to my account. I'm going to log in. I'm going to just take an existing order. I'm not going to go through the entire process of selecting order, but I'm just going to take a couple of, there's going to be a couple of lines to my order, 1 and 2. This is a very vanilla Magento site, hasn't been customized at all. So order 257 has been placed and it's in a pending state. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to move over to the scheduling area. So you haven't seen this before. This is just the standard Magento email which gets sent. I'm actually going to run this particular integration from our scheduler, and this will give you a demonstration of how our scheduler can work. So I'm just going to pick my Magento integration, and I'm going to run this now, but we have the ability to run integrations down to every 5 seconds, but you can set up things such as bi-daily, imports, exports, etc. by setting up 2 daily things, or you may have something which runs every week, so we can do that, or monthly, yearly schedules. But I'm just going to run this now, and this will take whatever is sitting at Magento in the pending state and actually try to import that into X3. So just a word of note, when we're integrating with X3, we work through the X3 web services, so potentially anything that you can expose to web services. Now obviously there are some considerations which need to be made in terms of exposing certain objects, but we've had success, obviously input with orders, customers, sales and purchase invoices, some stock transactions. As long as you're careful about the objects that you're exposing, you can potentially integrate anything through web services. So this has gone through and it's imported this particular order into X3. You can see here this is the customer. We had one customer updated. We went through and created a single sales order. So this is the Magento order, and this is the X3 order ID. And down in the detail section of our audit report, and this audit report is also emailed, so you don't need to be ever logged into IMAN. IMAN can run in the background, and you receive these audit reports as and when IMAN runs. You can see here that we've also got a couple of warnings, and this is coming from X3, and it's around the delivery date. So we flag any warnings or errors which are part of the integration onto the audit report. So you've got a full reconciliation and audit trail of your data and everything that's happened. So I'm just going to go and open up my X3 image. I'm going to go to orders. So my sales order number is 377. You can see here, this is my order number. You can see that the customer reference number, which is 257. And obviously this is going to customer C1101, and the reason it went there is because we had another lookup within our integration which did a lookup on the customer's email address. So within my Magento login, I logged in as james@realizable.co.uk. We did a lookup to actually try and find any customers with that particular email address. If we find a matching record, then we'll reuse that customer. Otherwise, we'll dynamically create a new customer record on import. And again, that's part of the integration, the configuration of the integration. So here, and if we just go over to lines, you can see here are my two products. Here are my 2 lines on my order. So that sort of concludes my demonstration. I'm really opening up the demonstration to see if anyone has any questions. They can type it into the chat. Adrian, I'm not sure whether you can open up the webinar to allow people to ask questions and things like that?
Yes, I just asked the audience to go ahead and either raise your hand and I'll unmute your line and you can ask your question live. So to raise your hand, you just push that raise your hand button next to your name on the webinar pane. Or to ask a question via text, just click on the question mark and a window will open up for you to indicate your question manually. I do have a couple polls I'd like to launch. So I'm launching the first one now. Are you interested in learning more about iMan? If you just take a minute to answer that question. And we do have a couple questions popping up now. Can you add connectors to other programs that have a REST API?
Yes, we can. So there's probably a couple of couple of responses to that. You can actually use our, there's a couple of ways that you can achieve that. At the moment, we have some native functionality to be able to retrieve from a REST API, but it's not sophisticated. You could also write a small connector piece, so you would need to do development, but we have an inbuilt SDK, which could allow you to do the, I'll say, the last hop to be able to integrate with this REST-based application. But in an upcoming version, probably released in January, we'll be releasing a native REST API client, which will allow you to integrate with REST-based applications without having to do any development. So at the moment, it's probably a little bit limited or restricted to doing some custom development, but in the new year, we'll be releasing something a lot more comprehensive, a lot more sort of configuration-based in line with what we're about.
And are there any well-known applications that you have built an integration with third-party applications for Sage 300 or Sage CRM?
Well, I mean, what you've seen in terms of the Magento integration with X3, the Magento connector here is actually written by one of our partners, and they've actually used our software development kit to actually write the Magento connector, which allows them to, allows them to write a single bit of code which does the connection to Magento, and from there they can actually leverage all of our functionality in terms of data transformation, scheduling, etc., and also connectivity into the various Sage applications. So we have a Magento connector and as well as a few other connectors for various e-commerce applications.
And what is a ballpark cost for this solution?
Okay. So if we
did we
go to our website?
Oh, we just lost you for a second, James. Could you just repeat what you said?
Yeah, so I'm just going to our website, which actually has our pricing information. So realizable.co.uk, realizable/iMan pricing. And basically what we have is a tiered type price model. So what we saw with the demonstration So what we have here is, I'll call a single integration. So if you've got just a single need, or if your customers just have a light integration requirement, then all they would need for this particular, this particular thing, they would just need a single integration license. So they would need the iMan core plus the Sage 300 ERP connector. So that would be 840 plus 420 plus 20% on top of that, and that's SRP. If, for example, they needed another data flow, so if they needed another integration outside of this, that would be a 2 integration license. So that would be these two, And then if they needed any more than that, then they would need to go to an unlimited license, which is 4,200. But that means that you can have unlimited amount of integrations on a single instance of IMAN.
Now, what kind of training is also included for a channel partner or a reseller of this application? When you engage with a reseller, do you offer a plan of engagement?
Yes. So what we do with business partners on their first implementation is that we provide free support and training to help them get up to speed with IMAN. So we do that free, and that helps you sort of get to terms with IMAN to be able to, implement something in a live scenario. But also what comes with IMAN is that it comes with a number of sample integrations. So there's 14 different integrations which go through various scenarios and use various products. And those samples also come with a detailed guide explaining what each of the steps in those do. And we also bundle a comprehensive training manual which actually guides you step by step to through a number of different scenarios to actually create integrations for yourselves. So we do offer free training for business partners on their first implementation, customers' implementation, but there's also a lot of training manuals which come with and aids which come with IMAN by default.
Just from the outside looking in as a third party myself, coming from ERP VAR, representing several channel partners and third-party developers, it seems like if a channel partner were to use this solution, they might have a higher customer service opportunity with providing an integration that can be implemented much quicker than creating an integration from scratch. It seems like there would be, a good opportunity for higher profit margins working with you. Do you have any success stories, James, of partners who can talk to using your solution instead of creating their integration from scratch?
Yeah, I suppose we've got probably about 8 or 9 business partners that we work with very closely, and some of those are smaller business partners, but some of them are quite large. And what I've seen happen is that instead of implementing custom-built integration, they actually use our product because A, they're able to deliver something a lot more quickly. It's usually a lot more cost-effective compared to bespoke or custom development. And it also gives the customer a bit more peace of mind. Because they're using a product, they're not reliant on the business partner. So, if their relationship deteriorates between the customer and the business partner, the customer has peace of mind because they can potentially go to another business partner and all of the ownership of both the software as well as the configuration is theirs. So, the next business partner can actually pick up this and help them maintain any integrations done by, another third party. And I suppose another advantage of our software is that the total cost of ownership is lowered drastically for any customer. Because there's no custom code, if the customer either upgrades their Sage application or their external application, they don't need to do a lot to IMAN. They don't need to recompile, for example. They may need to just update IMAN to be compliant with the new version of, say, Sage 300 or X3 or CRM. But you don't need to recreate these integrations. They're maintained, and all of the existing mapping should, for most part, work with the new application.
So that must be, that's a key selling point too to the customer, because I know it's often a headache when you try and develop one solution to another, from one upgrade to another. It seems like this just unlocked.
It's a common pain point because you need to go through a redevelopment. Well, not redevelopment, but you need to go through looking at the code. You may need to recompile it. That environment may not be available anymore, so you may need to recreate it. And there's a lot to do with deployment, etc. But by having a configurable solution which is available on site, it reduces that process from what can be days to, under an hour.
So perfect. I am not seeing any other questions from the audience. Thank you so much, James. This is it's a great tool. It looks like there's lots of opportunity for you. We have recorded this webinar, and we will be sending it out to all the attendees. James, do you have contact information where we could just show that on a screen for everyone to record that? We will be back in touch with everybody who attended, and thank you so much for taking time out to watch this webinar. But if we could maybe bring up some contact information, or James, maybe you could just verbally let everybody know what your email address is and your phone number.
Yep. So.
And James is in the UK. So what time is it over there right now?
It's 7 o'clock at night.
Okay. Just gives us an idea.
Yeah, that's fine. So they're my contact details. Yeah, please email me, or email's probably the best. Phone obviously can be reached, but it's usually between 9 and about 7 o'clock each evening. But yeah, email's probably the best method of contact.
James at realizable.co.uk, and then 440-208-123-101.
Yeah, and I think Kathy may have pasted that into the chat window as well. Perfect. Yeah.
And then let me just look real quick and see if we have any other questions, and I don't see any. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. And James, did you have anything else you would like to close with?
No, just thank you. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration. And yeah, if you see that our product may be of interest to you, then please get in touch. Otherwise, have a good day.
All right, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.